All right. Well, welcome. Welcome to Digital Frontlines. My name's Heath Dorn. I'm your host here on the podcast. Really excited. This is actually our first episode, so I thought I'd just kind of tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about the podcast, and kind of my background. I'm from a small town in Snohomish, Washington. Grew up on. My dad bought a little cabin after he got out of Vietnam. Raised us kids out in the woods a little bit, so chopped firewood all summer to heat the two log stoves in the winter. Pretty much lit a match in October and kept that stove going until April. No electric heat, so fruit trees and just kind of all American story, just like everybody else. Families from the New York and L.A. and my parents wanted to kind of get out in the country, so grew up riding dirt bikes and playing football and wrestling and American flag out in the front yard and just real patriotic family. And so this podcast is really about that. It's about technology in our U.S. military and really just my passion is what I get worried about is what's our future going to be like for our kids when they're asked to call and serve our country, and will we equip them with the best technology that we can give them, right? So that's really my passion, and the People's Republic of China is really our peer adversary, and they are developing technology at a rapid rate. So that's my passion. So yeah, grew up there in Washington State. I was a Boy Scout, and I went off to Israel in high school. Got a chance to study abroad in Israel. So I was back there in '96, and it was an amazing experience, but also some not so good things. So, got to go with a bunch of students from the U.S., and we went over there and learned about the history of the country. But unfortunately, I saw some things over there. That it was in the Intifada days, '96. So there was a bus bombing in Jerusalem, and another one in Tel Aviv, right off Dizengoff and King George Street. And I was staying there in a hostel, and also up in Jerusalem. I was there too. So I was right there and saw it all. And so just kind of getting that horrible images seared in my brain at an early age kind of made me kind of choose a different course of life, right? I thought I was going to play football and go in the NFL, and that was kind of my passion. But after that, it was just patriotism, military, and just making sure that the evil is kind of cut out in the world. So I ended up going to a military academy in South Carolina called the Citadel. It's the Military College of South Carolina, and it was created before the Civil War. So it's an interesting story. There's some folks kind of differ on how the Civil War started, but there were some cadets in Charleston at the battery there, and there was some cannons on the shoreline. And there was a Fort Sumter, and a ship resupplied Fort Sumter, and so the cannons hit the ship, and the cadets were kind of screwing around, I think, more than anything, but ended up hitting the ship. And then the North found out, came back, sent more troops into Charleston to resupply Fort Sumter, and that was really considered the start of the Civil War. So there's a star on my ring from the Citadel on here, so it reminds me every day. I haven't taken this ring off in 25 years, so it reminds me of kind of our rich history of our country going back there. So graduated from the Citadel, business degree, really just kind of passionate about technology. Learned how to code, write in HTML, and just kind of doing some coding back in college. And then that evolved over the years. I was at Amazon as in the QA team, so really just making sure that what's on the website matches what's in the warehouses. And my boss kind of saw that I was pretty passionate about fixing stuff, and so he let me do what we called kaizens, which were essentially a Japanese term for solving a problem, fixing a problem. And so I would build these like little houses, like cardboard houses inside the Amazon fulfillment center, and I'd bring a team, 8 to 10 people inside my little house. And I'd spend the first day and I go, okay, guys, let's go out and study and observe and get a stopwatch, clipboard, take some notes and just understand what the process was like and the pain points. And so we'd observe, and then the next day we would try come up with a hypothesis, some type of something to solve the problem, right? And then on the third day we would implement it and then test our results. And then by the end of the week we would implement the whole process, go brief the VPs and the leadership team, and we ended up saving millions of dollars for Amazon on different processes that we were fixing. And my developers were telling me about this technology called continuous integration, right? Where essentially you write your code, and then instead of waiting to test your code like 6 months or a year later, like most programs, big corporations do, this kind of waterfall development. This technology was you test your code like that day or the next day, or that sprint within that like kind of 2-week time frame. And so I got really fascinated with it. I went to a meetup, and I'm just kind of consumed myself. I actually started watching these YouTube videos of this guy named Kosuke Kawaguchi that invented this technology called Jenkins. And so then I met him, and he's just kind of like a rock star in the whole technology scene. And so he ended up building this tool, Jenkins. Kind of a cool story. He was at Sun Microsystems back in the day, and Sun got purchased by Oracle, and so there were some layoffs, and so over I think a Christmas break period, holiday break, Kosuke kind of took some of the computers that people weren't using, maybe from some of the layoffs or some computers around. He built himself a little server farm, and this is in I think he first started in like 2004 when he started the Hudson project, and then later on 2008 or 9 or so back then, he stitched it all together and he started automating the software build process. So as you build your software, you then automate write like a little test. We call it a unit test or an acceptance test, right? To just pass the test of that little like component on the iPhone or on the web page, right? That little component, we call it a unit. So you write a test and then you automate it and compare the code from the test to find out if the test passed or failed. And so he started writing these plugins, just like 10 or so plugins. And then everybody came back from the holiday break, and he was like, hey guys, try out my my little continuous integration tool here, this little platform. And it just took off from there. Everybody in the office started using it. And then all of a sudden Oracle's like, hey, let's make this thing proprietary. Let's make some money off it. And so Kosuke and the whole team that were on this project, they got it open source. They got it certified by MIT as an open source project. It's free. Everybody can use it. And so they said, hey, let's just fork this thing. We're not going to call it Hudson anymore. We'll all quit Oracle, so nobody's and we'll just leave. And so they forked it and called it Jenkins. And so then I met Kosuke kind of right after that, like a year later. I think there was like 60 plugins at the time when I met him. And now fast forward to today, and there are like almost 2,000 plugins. You could fill up like 9 or 10 Facebook data centers. So there's probably close to 25 million developers worldwide, and roughly 44% of them, so about 11.5 million developers use Jenkins today. There's some other tools, and now there's some AI tools like Kosuke created Launchable. But it's just, I was really fortunate. I was lucky to, so I left Amazon. And I saw this startup, and I go, let me, actually the guy that was in charge of cloud computing in AWS for North America, I interviewed with him, and he laughed at me and said I had no cloud experience. I'm like, the heck, man, cloud's not barely invented. Like nobody's even doing cloud. And he's looking, so I had to kind of go, down to the bottom of the, ground floor, and I got on with the startup. It was like 9 or 10 employees, bunch of ragtag engineers from Red Hat and Oracle and Sun Microsystems, and I just came in as like a sales guy, marketing guy, product guy. Started talking to customers, figuring out what they didn't have that, what Jenkins didn't have, what they needed. And so that's kind of where it started. And one of them was role-based access controls, so they can have cyber protection and security on who has access to the pipeline. And so what it's called is continuous integration, continuous delivery. Call it CI/CD, and security is a big part of it, because if you think about it as a hacker, how would a hacker get into a system? Well, they'd probably not want to try to get into it once it's already hardened and completed and deployed in production. But if they can hack into it while you're developing it during the software development process, that's where they can hack into it. And so CI/CD is just super critical and super important for that. So anyway, so that's kind of the background there. From there, I went into, I had one of my biggest customers, a big telco up in Seattle, Washington, T-Mobile. And so I went in there as like a DevOps coach. So I was kind of helping foster, Jenkins. And so working for the leadership team, the CIO at the time, and the COO, who now, the CEO is now Mike Sievert, CEO. Back then he was a COO. And so really I spent a couple of years at T-Mobile really helping T-Mobile like transform. So I kind of originally went in there trying to transform this DevOps piece, this Jenkins piece, because that's kind of what I was like really good at. But then what I realized was there was lots more to transformation. It wasn't just the technology. It wasn't just the testing. Because I was like, if you look at the whole software development process, you got testing's like in the middle, and to the left is development and design and requirements and funding and marketing and trying to understand the user's needs and personas and that. And then on the right side of testing, is the deployment and the integration, and then the development test and user testing, user acceptance testing, cybersecurity, training. And then once the system's complete, then there's like onboarding and customer feedback, and so there's a lot more down the pipe that way. And so when I was at T-Mobile, I got a chance to go all the way to the left and work all the way to the marketing department, and I got to go all the way to the right, going out to the stores and working with the retail reps in the stores, helping them get the systems online, like the activation system and billing systems and payments. And so so then at that time, they brought in a company called McKinsey, which you might know if you're in the consulting world. And McKinsey came in, and I think T-Mobile spent like $10-12 million like getting McKinsey to help them transform. And if you know anything about McKinsey, they're just a kind of a hot shot of college grads from Harvard and Yale with fancy suits and fancy accents. And all they did was do some workshops and delivered like a 252-page PowerPoint presentation to our CIO. So I'm in this meeting, and all of a sudden the CIO goes, "You're fired. Get everybody out." So I'm walking out, and he's like, "Heath, where are you going? You stay here." And so he goes, "Hey, you know anything about this agile stuff, this DevOps, stuff, digital transformation?" I go, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "What should we do?" And I go, "Well, I'd love to go to IBM's conference, learn more about this value streams," which was this new thing that was coming out in 2016 or so. And so I went down to Vegas, went to the IBM's conference, learned about value streams, came back, gave a report to the leadership team, and he goes down the hallway. The CIO goes down the hallway to the COO and says, "Hey, what's our," and he brings him in the room, and I go, "Hey, sir, so I think what we need to think about is what is our biggest impact, right? Like what causes the most pain in our company, and we should focus on that." So digital transformation really happens when you're at the edge of the cliff, right? When the competitors are delivering technology faster, and the customers are loving it and using it, that's when the competition really says, "Hey, wait a second, we got to move faster." And so there's this competition in digital transformation. And so back then in those days, if you all remember the customer bill, right? Remember our cell phone carriers, and we get a bill and it was like 10, 20 pages and had every phone number, on the bill. And so the COO said, "Hey, we don't want that anymore. We just want like what we have today, which is auto pay. It's on your phone. You don't even look at your bill. It just automatically pays, right?" But back then we weren't like that. So we started a team called the Understand My Bill team. So it was just a cross-functional team, and I remember the first day, like we had like names on the board, and I'm like, "All right, sir, who from architecture was really smart on billing? Okay, this Bob over here. Who from finance is really smart on billing? Samantha over here." And so we handpicked this cross-functional group of folks from the business, not IT. This is all on the business side. So the financial organization, the operations, marketing, sales, right? All the business organizations, we pulled all them out from billing. And then then I got them going in Kanban, which is a way to show and visualize your work. Taught them how to write requirements. I taught them how to create a vision for the bill. Taught them how to build out a roadmap. Taught them how to use Jira and Confluence, all these digital tools to capture and collaborate. I facilitated offsite, so train them. I brought the users in, so the retail store reps and the customer call center reps, brought them in, and I really helped them kind of think about flow, think about reducing handoffs and delays and the whole customer experience, right, of what it's like to go into a store in a telco like a T-Mobile or a Verizon or a Sprint store or AT&T. You go in the store, and what's that experience like? What's that customer journey like? You walk in, you go look at the phone, you have some questions, then you decide to purchase the phone, then you set up your plan, then you get the phone, then you transfer all the data from your old phone, then you go home and you go to grandma's house, and now the phone doesn't work because there's no reception. So now you're calling customer care, you're complaining, you're upset, you get on Facebook, get all mad, write a post about the company, right? And so we look at that whole experience of what it's like, and that's really the value stream is what we call it. And that's where the world's changing. We're moving away from this kind of command and control organizational structure into this cross-flowing value stream. And you see it in these big corporations, you see it in the small startups, and I see it in the military today. I was just on Capitol Hill this week talking to some of the leadership on the Hill about value streams and kill chains and missions and things like that, of how we need to be more integrated. So that's kind of the story. So I spent a couple of years there. I helped transform T-Mobile, had a blast, made a lot of great friends. I set up the billing team, the payments organization, supply chain, promotions, and just had a great time doing that. So and then integrated IT into it and built Scrum teams, and so it was a cross-functional teams all the way from marketing all the way out to the technology. And so from there, a big top 5 bank based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, brought me in, and their challenge there was they lost a lot of customers. I'm thinking like 1 million. It was a lot to a competitor, because at that time, this was like 2018, 2019 now. At that time, they didn't have a really good iPhone application or an Android application, and so some of the banks like Chase and Capital One kind of came out with some nice apps at that time, and so the rest of the fintech industry had to kind of chase after the competition to do that. And so I went to San Francisco to the tower, the skyscraper with the name of the bank on the top, and I went all the way up to the 30th floor to where the mobile banking team was at, and I show up, and there's ping pong tables, and nobody's there, and nobody's really working. And then I get in the app, and the app didn't work. No APIs didn't work, and I'm like, no wonder they're losing so many customers. And so they brought me in as an agile transformation coach. We stood up about 14 teams. We had teams in India, Bangalore. We had teams in Atlanta, Minneapolis, Oakland, San Francisco. And so we set up these teams, and I did the same approach that I learned when I did it over at that telco company up in Seattle with the bank here. I did the same thing. So I stood up a team called the Move Money team. So they were just responsible for bill pay and transfers and mobile check deposit and Zelle. That was fun. So we built Zelle. So yeah, I forgot about that. So everybody uses Zelle. So we built Zelle for that bank, and Zelle was actually already built, but we took what Zelle the foundational infrastructure of Zelle and put it into that banking app, which was revolutionary. Actually, my customer, the vice president of product for the bank, he got Digital Banker of the Year award in New York for what we did. We broke the record. We delivered that app. I think it was about 10 months. So from really zero experience, nobody really understanding agile or DevOps or continuous integration, we were able to create a vision, put in the app store of what we wanted to build. We stood up 14 teams, started sprinting every 2 weeks, had demos, right, showing working software and planning those sprints. And we had cross-functional teams and to eliminate, handoffs and delays and waste. And we were able to do that, and we really it was a pretty exciting time to be a part of probably the most. I'm still friends with all the developers and architects and everybody on that program. We all stayed in touch because it was just such a powerful experience. And I really implore my audience, like, if you ever get a chance to be a part of a special organization, try to do that, because once you do it, then you're really going to be able to help your customers in your next role do that. So yeah, that was the story, and so from there, I was reading a book and called Project to Product by Mick Kirsten in Yosemite. And it's really about his story. And he talks about how he helped transform these organizations from projects to products, right? And when we say product, it's kind of like what I was talking about with these companies. So like let's take an example of Zelle, right? Zelle is a product, right? So you have this backlog, and you have you send money, receive money, your activity of sending money, your setup, right? And so these are all backlog items that you have to build and create in order for Zelle as a product to work. And so you prioritize those products. So you focus on send money first and get the infrastructure, right? And then you build on it, right? And so it's different than a project, where a project is like a fixed time, a fixed cost, and a fixed scope, right? So called the iron triangle. And agility, the fixed scope is fluid. You can prioritize the backlog, so you're always focusing on the highest value. So you deliver the earliest value early, rather than wait 10 years to deliver the whole thing. You can start delivering the first year, the little chunk, a little piece of it, but at least it's highly valuable, and you can get feedback and build upon it. And so that's what his book's about, Project to Product. And so anyways, he helped, I think it was Bank of America, Nokia, and the U.S. Army. And so I was reading the book, and I was like, wow, how cool would it be to work for the military and help the military do the same thing that I just finished helping, Discover and John Deere and 3M and U.S. Bank and T-Mobile and all these, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the state of Missouri. I was really having a lot of fun just helping all these organizations. And so I come out of Yosemite, and there's a voicemail on my phone. I get reception, and it was a guy at Space Systems Command, right? Which is back then it was Space and Missile Command. So it wasn't even, the Space Force wasn't even started yet. It was this place in LA where they build the new systems, the new technology for the space, the part for the Air Force, but for up in space. And so I got a call, and this guy, I go down there, I meet this guy. He's the chief of staff for the general, so the 2-star general in charge of the whole base. And he's like, hey, saw you online, found out about you, interested in seeing if you want to come help us out. So I'm like, yeah, heck yeah. I didn't really have anything going on. I just finished up that bank. I was, taking some time off camping up in Yosemite and with my dad, and we were having a blast up there. And so I went down, moved to LA, and got into the U.S. military, helping out the Air Force. And so the crazy part was about 6 months later, I think it was December 20th, 2019, was when President Donald Trump signed into law the creation of the United States Space Force. And I was right there on the ground floor. It was so cool. I was in part of the ceremonies and just all the all the being working with all the young lieutenants and captains and major, all these young kids, and so I got to teach them about Agile. They didn't know anything about it. Like they're, so Agile started in 2001. It was 17 engineers at a ski resort called Snowbird Ski Resort in Utah, and I think like 16 of them had to knew how to ski, or 14 knew how to ski, and so a few of them didn't. So they stayed in the lodge, and they were like all of these software engineers from around the country, mostly Chicago, and they started talking about what are their challenges, what are they seeing, and so they ended up writing the Agile Manifesto, which is a set of values. It's 4 core values and 12 principles. And so really if we fast forward 100 years, 200 years, I believe there'll be these pockets in time where they'll talk about Elon Musk and Albert Einstein and some of the big contributions, SpaceX and all these things. But they're probably going to talk about the Agile Manifesto being written in 2001 with these 17 guys, and how that transformed the software world of how to make software differently rather than waterfall development, more collaboration, right? Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, welcoming changing requirements, over following a plan, right? Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, right? And then also, some 12 principles too of retrospectives, of continuously improving and showing working software every 2 weeks. So actually showing something to the users rather than waiting a year and giving a PowerPoint update. It's actually showing the system. So anyways, so that was in 2001. And then 2004, Kosuke created Hudson. Then 2009, I think, is when he transferred to Jenkins. And then a guy named Andrew Clay Schaefer, I think Andrew works at Pivotal now. He gave a speech in, I think it was in Belgium, in Ghent, Belgium. And he gave a speech about infrastructure, but really about, like the cloud compute, this is way back, really before cloud. But he talked about like the hardware, like you see in like a data center, and the people that manage that hardware. Those are like that's called operations, right? So they're the guys that got to provision the servers and the hardware and kind of manage all that, the IT guys. And then there's the developers. And so he kind of came up with this concept that we should have the developers and the operators working together, like on a team, integrated, so that when we get the code and it goes on the hardware, that it actually works. So, hey, crazy concept, right? So he came up with that, and so he called it DevOps. And there was I think he kind of kicked it off. Another guy kind of coined the term, but I really give Andrew Clay Shaver the credit. Andrew, if you're out there watching, I'd love to have you on the podcast, by the way. And so he came on, and so that was the DevOps movement in 2009. And that's when I got involved, 2000, I think 10, 11 is kind of when I started finding out about DevOps. And so so I'm the ambassador of the DevOps Institute, and just super passionate about it. My nickname is the strength coach, kind of like on a football team. You lift weights, and you have that strength coach in the locker room. Hey, give me one more rep. And that's what my developers call me, the strength coach, because I'm always like pushing them hard to kind of write code in a way that practices the principles of DevOps, right, and agility. And also the colonels and the generals that I work for today, they call me the strength coach, because I'm always kind of beating them up, trying to get one more rep, keep pushing them harder and harder, because our warfighters need the best technology that they can have. And so constantly pushing our people to do that. So, that's kind of the story. So yeah, I've been with the Space Force for the last 6 years since we started it back in 2019, and I spent they call me I kind of fix programs. So I get deployed out to a program that's kind of not going so well. So typically, it's different scenarios, right? The program could be, Congress could be like, hey, we might cut the funding, or the president. In one case, we had to brief the White House quite a bit on a program, which was really cool. That one, it was, I gotta not talk too much about these programs, but essentially this one is where back in 1979, we the military had to be able to track really everything in space. We call it space domain awareness. So there's all this debris up there. right? There's all these satellites, so there's probably close to, I don't know, somebody out there's probably going to correct me watching this video. There's probably close to anywhere from 60. It depends on the size. So 55 to 70,000 objects up there in space that are all maybe 4 centimeters or larger. And so we got to track all that. We got to know where it's at because they're like little missiles, right? They're going around the Earth at 15, 16,000 miles an hour, and we got to know where they're at because they could hit a satellite. And we have $1 billion satellite sitting up there. We can't let it get destroyed. All that government tax dollars, right? So we got to protect that stuff. So it's really critical that we have technology up there to manage all that debris and know where it's at. So they call it. There's one guy, tech director at Vandenberg. He calls it the jonculation or something like calculation, but it's like a jonculation because it's just the math is so complex. So, anyways, that program was built in '79, and it we have Cheyenne Mountain, right? A facility, it protects North America, and so that's really where that software really sits to kind of make sure that we can know where all the rockets are going and know what orbit it goes to, orbit termination, and how many satellites are up in space. So we got to track. It's called the satellite catalog. So we have to know where all these satellites are at any given time, and so we have to manage those and label them and make sure that they don't have any conjunctions, right, where they can crash into each other. So it's a really big mission area, and the reason why I'm kind of telling you this is because I think it's really important. In the brass at the Pentagon, I would say all agree with the statement that that the American people need to understand that the Space Force is really important. Just like in the Vietnam War, the Air Force was important, and we needed air superiority, and we saw that, right, in Desert Storm and Afghanistan, Iraq, where we had air superiority. The next conflict, global conflicts, is it's not going to be a Normandy invasion. It's not going to be kicking down doors in Kabul, right? It's going to be up in space. It's going to be cyber. It's going to be technology, and it might be, God forbid, I hope not, but a peer adversary. The People's Republic of China has their ambitions, right? They're growing, and if you haven't read the 100-Year Marathon, read it, or Danger Zone, by the coming conflict with China, or Kill Chain, or AI Superpowers by Kung Fu Lee. I run a book club as well. I've been doing a book club with all the colonels and leadership for the 6 years. We read a book every month on all these books about technology, China, leadership, and but it's important. So that's what I'm really passionate about, is making sure that 10-year-old that's playing in the park with his GI Joes, when he grows up and wants to join the Marine Corps or the Army or the Navy, any branch, that he has the technology to do his job and be safe and come home. And I think that now President Trump is in, and he has a great responsibility. I got a chance to talk to him about this actually a few months ago. It was pretty exciting. But just like President Reagan had that responsibility with Gorbachev in the Soviet Union to project power, right? We had a buildup of our military. I think we're seeing that now. We're seeing our military build up. But it's not, General David Alvin, just 2 weeks ago, I was with him. He's the chief of staff for the Air Force, and he was talking to us about, really the make more Air Force. And he didn't say it in a way of like make more airplanes. He said about that. He actually said agile like 5 times. So did General Saltzman when he's the chief CSO for the Space Force, 4-star, and he said agile 4 or 5 times. So I was like, heck yeah, as an agile guy, I'm like, finally, we got some great leaders that are really, on top of the mountain, saying we got to do this. So make more Air Force doesn't mean make more planes or make ships for the Navy. It means be lean, be agile, respond to the threat, develop capabilities, automate, innovate, do AI, DevOps, Agile, right? So we can move fast and cut the red tape. And so that's really what we need. So anyways, that's kind of the story. I spent 6 years in Space Force and really, really love it, and want to keep going and help us move forward. So if you're out there, if you're on the Hill, if you're a senator on the House Armed Services Committee, if you're a congressman on the House Armed Services Committee, or senator on the Hill, Ted Cruz, any of you guys would love to do a podcast and talk about this stuff. I'll be up there in a couple weeks. I'm going to pass out some new books. One of them is called The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. It's a great book, fictional book. And I'm going to bring some of those books to the Hill, and so our leadership can start reading that, and I hope our military leaders read it as well. But yep, that's kind of my story. So I'm gonna kind of finishing off here with kind of one of my favorite quotes from Gene Kim, and that goes, continuous improvement work is more important than daily work. All right. So if we have a manual process where we think we can apply improvement, maybe AI, maybe a low code, no code software solution, let's do it. Rather than sit there and spend those 10 hours or have your employees build that spreadsheet for 10 hours, why don't you instead say, hey, let's just enough with the spreadsheet for today. Why don't you go ahead and stitch together Airtable and Make.com and a couple of OpenAI plugins, and let's stitch together ChatGPT and automate that spreadsheet. So anyways, with that said, I'm signing off. Appreciate your time, and looking forward to talking to you more about digital transformation, agile, artificial intelligence, and how we can continue to push the envelope and keep the United States military at the tip of the spear, really, so that we can project enough power to deter President Xi and the People's Republic of China of acting out in aggression, and we can just be more of a global citizen and a partner with China, and rather than any type of future conflict, and we can all live in peace and harmony. So that's it. Amen.